Do you have free food hiding right in your front yard? You might. Have you ever mowed the grass and it smells like onions? Wild onions are all over the place down here in South Carolina, and you can forage them and eat them. Wild onions look like, well, onions. They have their long stalk, and if you look inside, the stalk is hollow. These ones are going to prove me wrong because they're sending up that middle stalk to go to flower, so they're not as hollow as they normally are. Right now, these wild onions are going to seed. They don't make huge bulbs, but free food is free food. These plants will spread. As they are flowering, they'll send out a shoot with a flower bulb. This will open into a flower, and then it will create bulblets on the bottom of the bulb that will spread out. And a lot of people do not like these in their yard. But you know what the best revenge on a weed is? To eat it. This is a great example of those little bulblets that will form on the onions. If you've ever left your onions in the ground and let them go through their seed process, they will divide and you can split them up. I have a section of regular green onions in my yard that I do this with. I leave them in every year. They create little bulbs around the bottom and they spread on their own, and then I just thin them out every now and then. So as these are going through their flowering process, these little bulbs will form into their own onions. So I prefer to pull these onions out before they start to go to flower. But if you wait until after they go to flower, when you pull them out, a lot of these little bulbs will stay in the ground and they will create more onions for next year. Now we have a bunch of wild onions that we can use to cook, we can preserve, we can dehydrate, we can freeze. There's a lot of ways you can use onions just like any other onion. Once my onions have dried out a little bit, depending on how much time I have and how backlogged my kitchen is, I may just take the entire bunch inside with me to work on it. I usually will pick out stuff that is really tiny, like these, and opt to keep bigger ones like this. You can use all of them. I just have so many that it doesn't make sense for me to take the time to process all the little tiny ones when I have bigger ones. That would be easier. So I have my whole bunch here. One option you can do is trim this part off and take just the bottoms inside to process, so then you're not taking all the extra greens. You can eat the greens on these just like you would any kind of green onion or chives in any of your dishes, but I have these all over my yard and they're available to me anytime, that if I need greens for a recipe, I'll just go out and get them fresh. I don't need to save them because I've got plenty. After I pull them out of the ground, I do let them sit for a couple of days and just kind of dry. You don't have to do this. Usually it's more because I don't have the time to get them taken care of right away. So they sit for a couple of days and they get that dry outer skin on them. And then I will process them just like I would any other type of onion. Because these ones are flowering, I would not recommend keeping them dried like you would braid onions and hang them in your house. You can put them in the dehydrator to dry them, but I wouldn't recommend just like setting them up someplace in the house to sit. Now that we've got our onions, we're ready to head to the kitchen. This is one of the largest wild onions I have found yet. I don't use any kind of chemicals in my yard, so I do not wash these. I will just take the roots off and the outer layers of the skin off, and usually the inside is pretty clean. I don't have to worry about washing it because there's no dirt on the inside. And you would prepare this just like any other onion. So I cut off the bottoms and then I cut off the tops. When it comes to cooking these, you can cook them just like any onion. You can slice them up and cook them fresh. You can add them to soups, quiche, different dishes, omelets, anything that you like. And you can preserve them by chopping them and freezing them. Or today I'm going to put these into my dehydrator. I want to dehydrate these in the way that I want them to rehydrate. So I'm not gonna do them whole, because when I put them into a recipe, I want them to be in tiny little slices. So we're doing all that work on the front end here so that we can put them in the dehydrator and have them ready to go when we have a dish that we want to add them to. Once I have enough stocked up of my dehydrated onions for recipes, I am going to dehydrate some and turn them into onion powder as well. So I will just dehydrate them. I won't have to slice them as finely, just enough to get them dehydrated. And then I'll put them into my spice grinder to turn them into onion powder. Life with toddlers can be a little bit crazy, so sometimes I only get enough to do one tray at a time. I'm going to turn this on medium, and then I'm going to let this sit overnight to dehydrate. Hear that crunchy sound? These dehydrated so well, and they don't take very long. They just were overnight and that was it. So now I can get them put into a jar and seal them and have them for future meals. Let me know, have you ever tried wild onions before? Would you give it a try? I'm always about finding ways to save money on the grocery bill. And these cost me nothing but a little bit of time. Well, thanks for hanging out today, friends. I'll see you next time. Bye.